Welcome back to the Encounter Faith Podcast, everybody. My name is Ross, and I am sitting here with Pastor Tara Beth because it is the start of Lent. Welcome, Pastor Tara Beth.
Hey, thanks for having me again, Ross.
I was probably a little too excited for Lent and Ash Wednesday, but I'm not going to go back and do another take. So, Pastor Tara Beth, as folks are listening to this, for those of you who listen on the day it comes out, it is Ash Wednesday 2026. And I like having these kind of conversations with you because I think it's important for us to never lose sight of why we do the things that we do as a church and why we do the things we do as believers. I think it's really easy to treat moments like this as have-tos rather than stuff that actually exists as a benefit to us. So to ask a broad question to start, like I like to do, why do we celebrate Ash Wednesday? Why do we mark this occasion every single year?
Yeah. So Ash Wednesday is the beginning of the season of Lent, which is a moment of rendering, a moment of recognition of our fragility. Because when we go into Lent, it is a time of denial. It is a time of alignment as we journey to the cross and then to the empty tomb. And so it's always a just holy and hard thing on Ash Wednesday to face our mortality and to ponder it. Because when we face our mortality, so much is stripped away. We as humans have our identity in so many different things, and we value a lot of stuff. Yeah. We value a lot of stuff, the things that we accumulate, the things that we achieve, the things that we've succeeded in. But when we're faced with our own mortality, we then have to ask, okay, what matters then? If I'm dust and I'm going to return to dust, then what's the most important thing? Well, is that we are children of God. And it is that in the bigger scheme of things, everything around us, including our own lives, is a blip on the radar. And so it's a reminder then to render our hearts so that we can align ourselves with the one who has said, I have come to give them life and life to the full. That pushes and pulls us into eternity.
Yeah. I'm glad we start at that kind of foundational level because I think for so many of you who are listening, you've been following Jesus for probably decades longer than even I have. And every year I get about halfway through Lent and I go, man, I didn't do Lent right. So for those of the folks who listen to this as it's coming out or in this sort of immediate days after, what are realistic expectations for a season like this when you talk about it being something that helps us draw our focus? Like,
Yeah, no, that's great. And it's interesting, I think, first, just backing up, when you look at how churches in America, Protestant churches in America, have navigated Lent.
Yeah.
Or not navigated it. Yeah. One of the things that we saw in the 70s is a pretty intense reaction against the Catholic Church with Protestant churches.
Sure.
And so they really moved away from following the church calendar. They moved away from liturgy because they wanted to be free to respond to the Holy Spirit. Nothing wrong with that, for sure. I kind of liken it to, have you ever gone to the gym, Ross? And you walk in without a plan. Okay.
There was a little bit too long of a pause there, Pastor Tara Beth, just for the record. Have you ever gone to the gym? There's a little bit too much of a healthy curiosity to see if that's ever been a thing that I've done.
I wasn't done. It wasn't.
No, I know.
Have you ever been to the gym? ?
Yeah. That's clear now. Yeah. I just want you to know it wasn't initially clear. So have I ever gone to the gym without a plan? Yes, very frequently.
Okay, you go to the gym without a plan and you walk in and you see maybe the medicine ball and you're like, I'll do the medicine ball today. And you're like, maybe I'll get on the bike for 10 minutes. And the next day you walk in and you're like, okay, I see the stair steps. I see the barbell. Why don't I do a chest press today?
Right.
And then like, it just, eventually you just kind of fall off the wagon. At least that's my experience.
I was going to say,
sure
now you've gotten to actually describing my real experiences. But yes, I love the question. Have you ever been to the gym? Yeah. It's like someone going, do you run? Like, do you know how to? But please continue.
So it's like, but then if you go to the gym and you have someone that gives you a plan to follow, a plan, say 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks, 4 years, where you always know what to expect, right? I think that when we removed the church calendar, it became kind of just a haphazard, free for all, where then it became easy to minimize or ignore realities within Scripture or the journey of the cross, of the incarnation of Jesus, of the season of Advent, the already but not yet, which are core scriptural pillars. And so when we get into Lent, it is a yearly thing. Like, so I often say, like, I view Lent almost like New Year's.
Yeah.
It's a reset for me. Of me asking, okay, what can I remove from my life or take away from my life so that I can better be more aware, more attuned to the triune God? And how do I examine my life during these 40 days and ask God, Lord, what in my life, what in my heart has over the last year has gotten in the way of me living for you, yearning for you, burning for you, worshiping you, honoring you. And so we remove or we deny things in our life, not as a legalistic ritual. Lent, there's no wrong way or right way to do Lent. And I mean that, like, because I hear like pastors get like really cynical about Lent and say, oh, okay, you're going to give up chocolate. Like, that's not what Lent is.
Right.
Nobody is saying that because someone gives up chocolate, that's what Lent is.
Right. Yeah.
Nobody is saying that. If you choose to deny anything in your life, that is a marked thing that you are doing. And I say, praise God, at least we're doing something. There's no right way. There's no wrong way. And I hear a lot of people do different things. I hear people give up social media. Why? Because it helps turn off the noise. Or maybe they are giving up chocolate because maybe it's such an obsession that they're always thinking about, when can I get my next dessert, when I can have that next chocolate. And every time they think about it, then they're going to, maybe pause and say, okay, God, what is it in my life that continues to drive that? I hear people that go dry Lent. You hear about dry January. There's dry Lent. There's just a number of different ways that people do this, but there's no right way or wrong way. It's not a legalistic ritual. It's a rhythm. It's something that we walk into the rhythms of grace, right? Or that's just naturally there in the church calendar.
I think it's really helpful for folks to hear you describe it that way, because I do think there's a lot of people who listen who a practice was hammered home so hard that it became the focal point. And similar to the history you're describing about the 70s, the desire to move away from it, to be able to react more in a more agile way to the Holy Spirit, in and of itself is a great desire.
It's a great desire.
I would love, even in our church, I would love to have it be easier for folks to see that happen. And some of our program and high church background makes that hard for some folks.
Yeah.
However, I think it's important for people to hear you go, it's a rhythm, because it therefore is beneficial for me to participate in that rhythm in however I am showing up in any given year. Because I think for 2026, one of the things that I'm mindful of is Lent being the first way people think about it as a time to deny ourselves. In a time where things feel so chaotic in the world. I'm curious how you think about the scriptural and foundational truth that we see in Lent and how it's applied to this kind of cultural moment.
Yeah, well, I think about the Gospel of Mark, which is what we're going to be studying during the season of Lent on Sunday mornings. And the Gospel of Mark is all about just a very narrow path to the cross. Yes, we see miracles. Yes, we see healings. But by the time we get to chapter 8, things get really grim and dark. Meanwhile, Rome is still in power, and the people of God are accusing Jesus of blasphemy, and there's a lot of chaos. One scholar put it that there was a lot of misery and squalor surrounding the ministry of Jesus. Not the ministry of Jesus, but like around him.
Sure, that's the world he was in.
Yeah, and so everything that Jesus taught and did was so subversive, was so opposite of the way of Rome, and even so opposite of the way of the Pharisees and what they had done with the Torah and what they had done with the law, by the ways that they were just weighing people down with extra laws that were never the intent. And, so we see Jesus work really hard to help people understand the intent, what the intent behind the law was, which we know is to love God and love your neighbor, right? But then part of that loving God and loving your neighbor, we see Jesus also talking about the Son of Man must suffer and die, and so must the disciple. The Son of Man must carry the cross. And that is very much at the heart of Lent, which is why, we begin at Ash Wednesday and we talk about death, suffering, fragility. Mark's gospel, 8, 9, 10, and 11, like that's at the heart of what it is. And then Jesus goes to the cross and he dies, right? And so we too need to come to terms with our calling in a world that says, well, I don't want to suffer.
Right.
I don't want to face death. Well, I just want to be comfortable. I don't want to deny myself. I want to earn. I want to achieve. I want to be the best. I want to be the most successful. But Lent calls us to a different direction, one that pulls us or propels us into a way of choosing, like the Apostle Paul talked about how he joined Christ in his sufferings. Like we're actually choosing to do that, which I don't see a lot of headlines talking about that.
Yeah.
Send it to me, friends. If you find one, send it.
Yeah. It's interesting that you talk about the headlines because dear listener, I would love to tell you that this is something that I read about in a deep, weighty theological book, but it's a TikTok that I saw that I haven't been able to stop thinking about, which the framework was they're talking about the church of 2040. And one of the things that they really emphasized is with the onslaught of AI and how we are heading into a increasingly more frictionless world and a increasingly more hyper-personalized world. And how the successful church of 2040 is the church that will be able to help define their sort of corner of monoculture, which is I experience this as truth, and the person next to you is also experiencing this as truth, and the person next to you is also experiencing this as truth. And the person who talks about the friction that comes with human-to-human interaction as an asset rather than a liability.
Yeah.
And what I hear you describing is leaning into that part of our identity, because I don't give a rip, as Ryan Hammer would say, about how helpful some of this technology is going to be for our lives. It fundamentally is not better than life together with people and the community of saints. And
the church offers something that the world just simply does not.
Right. And I guess if I'm listening to this, I'm someone who believes that to be true, but often doesn't necessarily know how to talk about that. And to give a sort of hypothetical example, if I'm someone I have someone in my office that I think I can tell that there's something, that they're hungry, that they're looking for something, that the ground is fertile, to use to use a Christianese expression. What I'm curious about for that is, how do you invite them into life at the church when that person's collective understanding about Lent is, well, that's the time of year that Christians say they give up chocolate, but usually they're just eating chocolate and not telling anyone.
Yeah, no, I love that, Ross, because a Lent is not a solo journey. It's not just between God and I. Yeah. So for example, I can't tell you how many people I've already told what I plan to do for this Lent and some of the practice I intend to do and some of the things that I intend to take away. Why? Because there's some accountability in that, and they're praying for me in that, and some things that I'm working through spiritually, some things I'm working through emotionally. And I want God to really, I'm like, okay, here I am, God, deal with this in me. And that's not something I want to go through alone. Kurt Thompson, an incredible Christian scholar, often talks about, we talk about knowing God as though it's like a vertical me and God relationship. But it's also about being known, and not just being known by God, but by being known by others. And so, whether it's in a small group, whether it's a few people that whether it's jumping out and saying, okay, I'm going to start to find my people and be in community with them, whether it's, maybe you're going to find them in a program, maybe you're going to find them in a small group, maybe you're going to find them in one of our Monday nights or Thursday night. But it's a deliberate choice to start connecting yourself and creating community so that you can be known.
Yeah. Because my encouragement for folks is you really don't have to.
Yeah.
I think it's something that the church forgets a lot because statistically so many of, depending on the study you read, it's 40 to 75% of the people in the church have kind of always been in the church.
Yeah.
We're part of the church between the ages of 4 and 14.
Yeah.
For those of you who read the same articles that I used to read. And that means that there's a quarter of us who can really remember on any level what it was like to not be a part of the church.
Yeah.
So we get this wrong. We're not very good at helping people understand that we have something to offer them.
Right.
Because for us, it's just the water we're in. And I would love for folks to be able to pay attention to the ways in which when you are navigating what it's like to be a person in 2026, how you are drawing from a well that never runs dry when your neighbor is not.
Right.
And how the things that you have staked your identity in because you've staked your identity in Jesus make you look different than the person who has staked their identity in something else. And not in a judgmental way, but in a way that highlights the opportunity that exists for your individual witness and our collective witness as a church. One of the things that the liturgical calendar on any level, but I think especially during Lent, also provides is a very clear kind of mile marker for us as a church. And one of the things that I'm curious about, because you wind up coming back to Good Shepherd right before an Easter. This is year 3. I don't know how much time you've had to sort of process it with that lens, but I'm curious what you've seen in this church over those 3 years and how this Easter is different than your first Easter back or some of the Easters when you were on staff previously.
Yeah, well, Good Shepherd loves their Easter.
Yeah, that's
Man,
true.
they really love it. And I feel like we do a good job of celebrating Easter and proclaiming that Christ has risen. It's hard to believe it's been 3 years. It's really hard to believe. And it's just so cool that I came here during Lent 3 years ago. And, when I came, one of the things I remember thinking is, Good Shepherd was so excited that I was coming. And I remember sitting in therapy and my spiritual director and being like, they need to stop being excited. They're so convinced this is going to go well.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, it's not going to go well. I was coming in as the suffering servant,
Yep.
To ride the ship, that was sinking. And, for anyone that's new, it's not that the community had done anything wrong. They had lost some pastors. They had been through COVID, and there had been some church division over kind of the pastoral exit. And I thought I was coming in to
You have described previously, you had a deep fear that you were coming in and you were going to wind up having to close the doors.
Yeah.
And most of that had everything to do with where you're at that time. But
if God had like a real like snarky sense of humor, God would be saying, "Ha ha, joke's on you."
Right. 100%. 100%. And no, it just has to be friends in your life who have that snarky sense of humor who could tell you that.
But no, I think it's a sign of God's faithfulness because we're a church year over year where we're just seeing, man, a new sense of joy. Mm-hmm. I mean, I want to like a resurrection.
Sure.
And, Good Shepherd had to go through that suffering first as a community. They had to experience a lot of pain. They had to carry their cross. And I think that we have seen that joy and the mercy that is new every morning.
Yeah. I mean, the ironic part of this being that was a season where you weren't here, and it was a season when I didn't know this place existed, really.
Yeah.
But so I don't at all mean to trivialize it for those of you who are listening who walked with Good Shepherd faithfully during a season like that. But where I think it's relevant to anybody listening is the kind of joy, I often use the phrase spiritual momentum that you feel when you walk into this place is because of the faithfulness of the individuals who stood during those times. It is because of the faithfulness of those who have been here for 10, 20, 30, 50 years. Mm-hmm. And wherever you're at church-wise, my hope as a guy who hosts a podcast about it is that you can find that type of connection in your context, because seeing it happen here sort of, and almost despite of the circumstances that Pastor Tara Beth's alluding to there, has helped me believe again that is possible in a local church and a requirement for anyone in just to be a person in today's modern world. Mm-hmm. Where I want to kind of land the plane here, one of the things that I'm mindful of specifically to Ash Wednesday is there's a benefit of the ritual that you've talked so much about, but there's also ways in which the ritual can become trivial. So specific to Ash Wednesday, but also to some of what you've already described through all of Lent. I'm curious how you keep these things that you do, some cases every year, some cases every week, every day even, how you keep those things sacred and what the balance of that looks like between this is the habit that I'm doing versus this is actually, like, as my friend would say, boldly going into the throne room of grace.
Yeah, I think it's as simple as choosing to be present. When we start turning things into just a ritual, we might be going through the motions, but our brains and our intentions are somewhere else.
Sure.
I think about morning prayer, for example.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason why I say probably not the best idea for you to pick up your phone before you begin morning prayer, because that's what's going to be echoing in your mind. Mm-hmm. And, simply just choosing to be present in the season of Lent and the things that you are choosing to do, or in worship or in prayer time, and working really hard to not let your brain wander, which, hey, Ross, you and I have ADHD.
It's true.
And we know how hard that is.
Mm-hmm.
We also know what it's like to deliberately choose to be present, and present before God and present in the things that we are doing. And I think it's as simple as that.
Yeah. I think it's important to say again and again and again, in response to a recent message of yours, it changed how I was doing my morning prayer time, and had the funny experience as I was driving today, dear listener, where a practice that I had tried for 6 or 7 days in a row that felt really good, I was in a position where I had to do it a different way. And I'm about 15 minutes into it, and I say out loud, "Oop, well, this doesn't work this way." Yeah. And because I wasn't present, it was everything that you just described. My encouragement to folks who desire that for Lent is that tomorrow I'm going to go back to the way I was doing it the first 7 days. Mm. And that who I am in Jesus didn't change. And
right.
The point of that practice is actually the awareness of, this was not working, versus the past week where it worked really well. Right. My hope for anybody with Lent when it comes to what their spiritual practices look like, or also what their participation in a church like ours looks like, is that we are more focused on the outcome discipleship, long, slow walk of faithfulness than on any of these things that we, as your friend, Pastor Faith Cho would like to say, the counterfeits and substitutes we so often put in the way. Last word, my question is, one of the things that I think is beneficial for a season like Lent is it allows us to have a very clear sort of start and end time. What I'm curious about is, for the folks who are still listening, we're talking right now a couple days before Ash Wednesday. Easter is April 5th this year. Mm-hmm. On April 6th, what do you hope our people have experienced?
Yeah, it's still Easter. We then move into a season of Eastertide. And it's still a time for us to journey with Jesus in the resurrection. You know, after that moment where Mary proclaims Jesus is alive, he spends 40 more days teaching and preaching, and the Gospels are full of resurrection encounters all the way up to Acts chapter 1. And so don't just move on to, you know, it's April and May and, you know,
it's summer,
we just turn things off until Pentecost and then we check out. Eastertide is a profound time for us to reflect on what it means that Jesus is risen.
Thank you for listening to the Encounter Faith podcast. This podcast is a service of G. Shep Productions from Good Shepherd Lutheran Church in Naperville, Illinois. All rights reserved. If you're in the area, we'd love to meet you on a Sunday morning at our 9 a.m. or 10:45 services. At Good Shepherd, we are inviting everyone to walk together in the calling of Christ for a life of eternal impact. This podcast is produced and hosted by me, Ross Cochran. And our theme song is Wake the Earth by 1111 Worship. Thank you for listening. We'll talk again soon.